I came home for Thanksgiving and found a rocking chair where a welcome should have been. The house was cold. The fridge hummed like a bad joke. On the counter waited a note in my husband's handwriting. Gone on the Caribbean cruise with Hannah. Mom needs a break. You'll stay and care for Victor. Back Monday. A cane scraped the hallway. My husband's stepfather opened one eye and said very gently, "Shall we begin?" 4 days later, my husband was begging, not because I raised my voice, but because paper did. My name is Jade. For 5 years, I believed I had a marriage. What I had was a man who took our savings, a mother who called neglect a vacation, and a colleague named Hannah who posed on a ship with a flute of champagne and a hashtag about new beginnings. What they did not plan for? A stepfather with stage 4 truth, a folder full of receipts, an attorney who did not blink, and a woman who stopped apologizing. This is not a story about rage. It is a story about documentation, dignity, and a holiday that became a hearing. Tonight we set the table with evidence, and when they come home sunburned and smiling, the room will tell them exactly who they are. Thanksgiving air had that thin, bright edge that makes you think of cinnamon and sweaters. I pulled into the driveway with a trunk full of pie fixings and a head full of lists. No porch light, no voices. Only a rocking chair facing the door as if the house had appointed a sentinel. Inside, the heat was turned low enough to make breath visible. I set my keys down and found the note. Simple sentences, casual cruelty. Gone on a cruise. With Hannah. Mom needed a break. You will stay and take care of Victor. Back Monday. The paper trembled in my hand. The room stilled. A voice behind me, dry as winter leaves. He is not coming back today, is he? Victor stood in the doorway with a cane and clear blue eyes that did not belong to the feeble man I had been told about. The coat hung on him like a borrowed shadow, but his mind was a light switched on. Left you with the work, he said softly. Classic. I called my husband, straight to voicemail. I tried again and again. Silence answered like policy. My phone buzzed with something that was not a call. A photo from a ship stack. My husband grinning beside Hannah from his office, both holding champagne. The caption said, "New beginnings." The tag said, "Family." I locked the screen and set the phone face down as if it could misbehave if it saw the ceiling. We planned this dinner for months, I said, more to the room than to Victor. His mother was supposed to host. Victor moved to the fridge and poured water with hands that shook only a little. They left on Tuesday, he said. Forgot groceries, remembered sunglasses. He looked at the nearly empty shelves, then at my bag of cranberries and sweet potatoes. You brought sides. They left the meal. I opened the banking app because fear has a ritual. A number punched the air out of me. 5,200 withdrawn 3 days ago. Almost everything we had saved for a down payment. He took it, I said. He took our future for a ticket. Victor did not look surprised. They have been siphoning for years, he said. For my care, they say, while the heat sits low and the pills come late. A choice stood up in me. I could reheat soup and cry into it, or I could make Thanksgiving out of scraps and decide who I would be at this table. No leftover soup, I said. We deserve better. I grabbed my coat, bought a small turkey breast, potatoes, green beans, butter, and a pie crust, because dignity can be store-bought when time is short. Back in the kitchen, I set water to boil and the oven to warm. Victor laid a stack of paper on the table. Evidence, he said. Bank statements, missed appointments, notes in a neat hand recording diluted doses and delayed refills, the word terminal printed on a report like a stamp that should have been handled with tenderness and was not. My throat burned. They left you like this, knowing. He lifted one shoulder. Now you know. We ate at a cleared corner of the table, the plate too simple and somehow perfect. Tell me about your marriage, he said. It came out not as gossip, but as medical history. I described how love had turned into supervision, work from home. Do not bother with those clients. Why do you need to be out so late with friends? Let me hold your phone. Let us keep your inheritance safe in a joint account. Victor nodded the way doctors do when a pattern becomes a diagnosis. Isolation, he said. Restriction. Reframing. Classic. After dishes, he led me to a small room that had once been a study. Behind a painting hung on 2 bent nails was a loose panel. Behind the panel, a weatherproof case. Inside the case, deeds, statements, a trust. The kind of paper that does not post photos. My real assets, he said. Separate, protected. They thought they knew everything. They know almost nothing. I stared at numbers that did not match the story his family told about being tired and stretched. Why show me? I asked. Because you were left with the burden, he said. And because I do not have years, I have months, maybe less. Help me finish this. Help me make it right. He slid an envelope across the desk. My true will and trust, he said. Shall we begin? The words felt like a door unlocking from the inside. Yes, I said. Let's begin. Morning opened the house like a file. We made tea. We made a list. First, understand the body. Victor handed me a folder labeled medical, pancreas, stage 4, a timeline written in scans and measurements, 2 months, perhaps less. They know, he said. They were in the room when the doctor said the word and still booked son. Second, audit the care that was not care. In the bathroom cabinets, we counted bottles. Pain medication refilled twice, nearly full. Enzyme supplements half used when they should have been waiting. Half doses, Victor said. Half plans, half love. I photographed labels next to a handwritten list for scale. Nurses call it charting. Lawyers call it evidence. Good stories call it proof. Third, bring in a professional who understands both compassion and consequence. Victor called Patricia his attorney, a woman with silver hair and the posture of a clause. She arrived before noon with forms, witnesses, and a look that said she had measured this family and found it exactly the size Victor had described. We will formalize powers, she said. We will amend the will. We will record transfers. Her pen moved like a clean blade through tangle. I can build the archive, I offered. Scan, tag, timestamp, make it legible. Perfect, she said. Courts like neat. Fourth, shape the narrative of neglect that began before their cruise. Not lies, but a ledger. I drew a simple template. Date, symptom, intervention, outcome. In the margins, I noted the neighbors who had stories. Mrs. Peterson next door, whose husband had lifted Victor from the lawn while the game blared inside. The mail carrier who found packages of medical supplies sitting in the rain because no one had bothered to open the door. Fifth, ensure comfort now, because justice without tenderness is just theater. I adjusted pillows. I cooked real food. I read aloud from a Raymond Chandler paperback with a cracked spine and a smell like used bookstores and time. When Victor dozed, I answered messages that did not deserve my energy with a silence that did. By late afternoon, Patricia's brother had delivered a few items that would make the room look like the care it should have been receiving all along. An oxygen stand, a monitor with a benign blink, hospital sheets. Medical theater, he said with a wink, but the story is true. We staged nothing cruel. We only made visible what their absence concealed. I sent a single text to Melissa, the only one who had bothered to check in all week. A simple update. Fever last night, managing pain, will keep you posted. The reply arrived in minutes. Oh no, keep me updated. I noted the time. Between calls, I opened our joint banking page again, as if a different number might appear by will alone. It did not. 5,200 gone. My father's gift folded into tickets and deck chairs and glittering photos. Grief clenched around my ribs and then loosened into something sharper than sadness. I want to be clear, Victor said, watching my face. This is not revenge. This is naming. This is correction. I can live with that, I said. We ate a small supper and drank tea because coffee would have been a promise I could not keep. Before bed, Victor asked for peaches with cream. November had no business offering peaches, but I found some that had traveled far and still remembered sweetness. He took one bite and closed his eyes. "Martha used to slice them like this," he said. "Crescents, like a moon you can eat." He slept. I wrote. A log for the night, temperatures, meds, notes on breathing, notes on kindness. In the quiet, I drafted 3 sentences that would become my spine for the week. Stay gentle, stay precise, stay lawful. The house was still cold, but the room we worked in felt warm. Day 2 began with Victor weaker than before, not by theater, but by truth. Lips a little blue, hands a little tremor. I called the hospice nurse who had seen him last and asked her to come by. She said afternoon. She taught me 3 small things to do that would matter until then. Between sips of water, Victor gave me the next piece. "Melissa," he said, "she is the one with a conscience when it is convenient. Show her a picture of the truth." We took photos with careful angles and honest light. Victor without glasses, hair a little out of place. The oxygen stand near enough to whisper meaning. The monitor blinking a soft lie that hurt no one. He coached me as if we were staging a production where the audience was the only actor left to convince. "Shadows," he said. "Let the hollows show." I sent 3 images and 1 message. Managing. Fever overnight. Asking for Brady when lucid. The first reply pinged at once. "Poor uncle. The tickets were non-refundable. We'll tell them. A timestamp is a mirror." I saved the screenshot. Then I called my husband again and left a voicemail I wrote like a script. Specific, factual, a tremor I did not have to fake. "Victor's breathing is worse. The hospice nurse is concerned. Please call me." I recorded my side of the call as documentation, not performance. I repeated that call every few hours, each with a new small fact and a timbre that would shame anyone built to feel it. At noon, the doorbell rang. Mrs. Peterson stood on the porch with a casserole under foil and a face that knew how to hold both kindness and witnesses. "You must be Jade," she said. "I wondered when someone would care properly for that man." I invited her in, fed her tea, and listened. People talk when they want the world to be better. She told me about the fall in the yard, the football game, the knocks ignored. She told me how often she had seen takeout bags and how rarely she had seen groceries. She told me the neighborhood had noticed. "It is a shame," she said, "and I do not mind saying so." I took notes with dates. I asked permission to list her name. She gave it, proud as a citizen. By evening, 3 more neighbors had stopped by with food, stories, and phone numbers. I built a witness list on a single clean page, each line a line in a future filing. Not gossip, testimony. The hospice nurse arrived at 3 and assessed with a hand that knew the work. She took me into the hall and told me what my eyes already understood. "His organs are tired," she said. "It may be hours, maybe a day." I asked if I should call the family. She looked at me the way professionals do when they have seen too much to waste words. "You should do what is best for him," she said. Victor had heard from the bedroom. "Do not call them," he said quietly. "Call Patricia. We will finish." Patricia returned with a notary and the last papers. Victor signed with the strength that the right moment can create in a failing body. Control of assets moved into a trust that protected charities and me as trustee. The will named neglect without theatrics and disinherited with calm. A clause waited for any contest like a gentle door that shuts softly and locks. "Now film," Victor said, asking for his old camcorder like a man asking for a last book. I set it on a tripod. He spoke directly to the lens for 20 measured minutes. Clear, composed, no rancor, only facts and sorrow and 1 sentence that broke the air and remade it. "Jade showed me more dignity in 4 days than my family did in 4 years." We poured a thimble of port saved for an anniversary that had never come. We toasted justice and dignity, 2 words that taste better than revenge. He dozed. I read a chapter. Around midnight, his breathing changed. I set the book down and held his hand. He left the room like a person who knows where he is going. The nurse returned at dawn and nodded at the peace that lay on his face. The funeral home was on time and careful. A man in a dark suit told me stories about Victor's quiet donations to fundraisers, and I tucked those into my chest like small warm stones. Then I set the house like a stage for the people who had chosen son over bedside. Letter on the mantel. Files in order on the table. Video cued on the screen. Cruise photos printed and dated beside a log that showed fever and pain and calls that went unanswered. Not a trap, a mirror. At noon, car doors, laughter, keys. The front door opened and the vacation entered the living room. I stood by the empty rocking chair. The room smelled faintly of lemon oil and truth. "Let us begin," I said. The door swung wide on laughter that did not belong in this room. My husband came in first, sunburned and smiling, duty-free bags digging into his wrists. His mother followed, perfume before apology. His sister, Melissa, hovered behind, eyes already scanning for cues. Hannah, colleague, caption, confession, tried to look small and failed. "Honey, he started, then saw me by the empty rocking chair. The smile fell off like something unglued. "Where's Dad?" Elaine asked, not with worry but with scheduling. "Victor died Saturday, just before midnight," I said. The hospice nurse helped. It was peaceful. Bags hit the floor. Paper crinkled loud. Hannah took one step toward the door, instinct in heels. Melissa's hand went to her mouth. "You had a funeral without us?" my husband demanded, face moving through shock into the familiar shape of anger that thinks it is authority. "His friends came," I said. "So did your neighbors. I left multiple messages as his condition worsened. I did not add the timestamps. Not yet." "Sit," I said. "Please." I held out the cream envelope. "Victor asked me to read this when you returned." Elaine tried to snatch it. I moved the envelope out of reach with a steadiness that surprised us both. "His words," I said. "In his order," I read. "Holidays alone. Appointments canceled because brunch. Comments made in rooms he was not supposed to hear." He had written it simply, like minutes from a meeting where decency failed to attend. I watched faces. Elaine's jaw tightened into a hinge. Melissa's eyes floated from line to line, as if trying to swim to land. My husband fidgeted, then went still when the letter reached the sentence about waiting for the old man to die. "The greatest pain," I read, "is not illness or even death, but the realization that those you loved saw you only as a task." Silence arrived and sat in Victor's chair. "He was confused," my husband said too quickly. "Medication," Victor recorded a statement, I said. I picked up the remote. On the screen, his face appeared clear, glasses off, voice steady. He spoke for 20 measured minutes about years that had felt like slow theft. He said my name once the way good people say it when they have decided to trust you and are not sorry. By the 4th minute, Elaine had stopped interrupting. By the 10th, Melissa had looked down and stayed there. By the end, even the notary in the memory of that room would have blinked hard. On this day, only Hannah shifted her weight like a runner planning a route. "This is a setup," my husband hissed. "She manipulated him." He pointed at me, a move he had practiced into muscle memory. Right then, the doorbell rang with the kind of timing you cannot buy. I opened it to Patricia and a man with a notary stamp and the patience of stone. "Am I interrupting?" she asked, polite as a blade. "Perfect timing," I said. Patricia set her briefcase on the dining table that now held neatly labeled stacks: financial exploitation, medical neglect, abandonment timeline. She did not sit. She did not need to. "As the executor of Mr. Harmon's estate," she said, "I am here to deliver formal notice." My husband straightened like someone entering a negotiation he expected to win. Elaine folded her hands as if prayer might make law into lore. "The will is valid," Patricia continued, "properly witnessed, notarized, and already filed with the court. Mr. Harmon left the entirety of his estate to Jade Mitchell, with specified charitable gifts to elder abuse prevention organizations. Elaine's voice rose sharp. That is impossible. We are his family. The will cites abandonment and neglect as reasons for disinheritance, Patricia said calmly. 2 physicians certified his competence at signing. We will contest, my husband said. The words sounded thinner in this room than they do on television. You may, Patricia said. You will lose. The record is, she glanced at the table, comprehensive. He looked to assets he had already spent in his head. The house, he said. At least the house. Patricia opened a separate folder with the neat confidence of a person who alphabetizes justice. The property you occupy belongs to a trust that is not now, nor has it recently been, in your name or your mother's, she said. You have been a tenant at will, tolerated by kindness. The trustee of that trust, she looked at me, is now Mrs. Mitchell. Elaine's face drained to the color of the envelope. What about the accounts? Melissa asked, voice small as a paper cut. Frozen, Patricia said, pending audit for misuse. If funds were diverted under the guise of care without being spent on care, there will be consequences. Melissa turned to her brother. You told me Grandpa set aside money for us, for college. He did not meet her eyes. That told the room more than any affidavit. My husband pivoted to me with the sudden softness he saved for emergencies and sales. Jade, please, we can talk. Hannah meant nothing. I was under stress. We can fix this. He always said we when he meant I. I took off my wedding ring. It came away like a bandage that had already let go underneath. I placed it in his palm, then set our apartment keys on top. You left him, I said, voice level as a measurement. Now you leave with nothing. He looked down at the small pile of metal and promise and found no handle. Patricia slid one last document across the table. Notices of removal, she said. You will vacate Mr. Harmon's house within 14 days. The trustee will allow 1 supervised visit for sentimental items that are not assets. You will not remove furniture, art, electronics, or files. You will not remove anything, in fact, without written permission. Elaine sputtered and reached for indignation as if it were a coat that might still fit. For appearances, for decency, Patricia said, and the correction hung in the air like good art. Hannah had already retreated to the hall. She set down 2 bags of glittering duty-free and said to no one in particular, I should go. She always had good timing when exits were free. The notary took signatures where signatures were required. He stamped where stamps belonged. The sound of ink touching paper felt like weather changing. My husband tried one more tone. If you do this, I will make your life hell. You already tried, I said. It did not take. He looked at me for a long second, weighing threats like coins. He found the purse empty. Melissa, pale under her vacation tan, whispered to me as Patricia gathered her files. I am sorry, she said. It was not enough, but it was something with a heartbeat. Patricia closed her briefcase. We are done here, she said. Then, to me, you should go rest. I will send copies. The room stayed very still after they left. Quiet has a different temperature when safety enters it. I picked up my suitcase from where I had placed it near the door that morning. My husband followed into the hall, voice shifting through a handful of keys that no longer fit any lock. Jade, keep receipts, I said without turning. You taught me that. Outside, the air felt like beginning. Mrs. Peterson waved from her porch as I loaded the suitcase. Across the street, a delivery truck paused, the driver reading the house as if it had changed names. In a way, it had. Patricia had reserved a quiet hotel room for me, 2 nights prepaid, no card required, while we set the next tasks in order. I drove there with both hands on the wheel and my jaw unclenched. In the lobby, a clerk with kind eyes handed me a key and said, "We are sorry for your loss." The phrase landed accurately for once. In the room, I set the case on the rack and sat on the bed without collapsing. The window looked over trees that did not care who had been cruel this week. I breathed. Then I did what grief and aftermath both require. I made a list. Call hospice to thank Diane. Call the funeral home to confirm billing as per Victor's instructions. Meet Patricia tomorrow to sign trustee documents and open the audit file. Email the wildlife rescue Victor loved. He had mentioned a donation. Text my friend Leah 2 honest sentences. She will come with soup and silence. I wrote a separate list titled, For Later. Therapy, new bank, new locks for our apartment, even though I had handed back the keys. Old habits die last. Cancel joint credit cards, open one in my name only. Back up the evidence archive to 2 drives and a cloud that will not forget. My phone lit with messages at last. My husband cycling through apology, and then strategy, and then rage. Elaine demanding meetings her calendar no longer controlled. Melissa asking if she could come by this week to sit in Victor's room one last time. I answered only one. Melissa, yes, supervised. After we inventory. I slept that night without bracing, not because life was simple, but because it was straight. The next morning we met at Patricia's office, a room full of books with spines that have done this work longer than any one family's drama. I signed trustee papers. Patricia explained the oversight obligations with precision and respect. You will not be alone in this, she said. That is the point of structure. We reviewed Victor's final gifts. Modest cash for me to begin again. Substantial bequests to 2 elder abuse nonprofits. A scholarship fund at the community college for caregivers who need short breaks to stay human. He asked for no plaques, Patricia said, only outcomes. I walked to the rescue after and told them about the donation, leaving out everything that was none of their business. The director cried a little and laughed at herself for crying and said, "He always gave quietly." We planned a small memorial release of a hawk once their team cleared it for the sky. Back at the hotel, I opened my laptop and wrote the first honest email in months. Dear clients, I am back on limited design hours. Thank you for your patience. My rate is the same. My boundaries are new. In the evening, I sat with a cup of tea in a chair that did not rock and read Victor's letter again, this time as benediction instead of evidence. The line about tasks landed differently now. There are whole lives built around managing other people's wants until your own barely register. I felt mine returning, like circulation to a numb hand. On Wednesday, Melissa came with a paper bag of bakery cookies and a face that did not try to paint itself. Patricia's paralegal supervised while we let her sit in Victor's room. She touched the blanket and cried, and did not ask for anything but a minute. On the way out, she said, "I am going to school anyway. Community college for a year, then transfer. Grandpa would want that." I believed her. Sometimes one person's consequence becomes another person's start. By week's end, the audit found enough to keep any contest brief and expensive. My husband moved to a friend's couch. Hannah's account went private. Elaine told anyone who would listen that appearances had been violated. Fewer people listened. I bought a new notebook. On the first page I wrote, "After." Underneath, a list with 4 lines. Find a small place with good light. Buy us a second-hand table sturdy enough for pie crusts and paperwork. Keep peaches in summer. Keep receipts, always. I closed the cover and felt the lightness that comes when you put down a weight you have carried so long it felt like a limb. The story was not revenge. It was repair. I texted Leah, "Dinner tomorrow? Not soup. Something celebratory but quiet." She sent back one word, "Yes." I slept. Morning arrived right on time. On Friday, Patricia's paralegal, Caleb, a patient man with a neat beard and a stopwatch brain, met me at the house for the supervised visit. We arrived 10 minutes early. I unlocked the door with the trusty key. The rooms smelled like lemon oil and a distant argument. At 2 o'clock exactly, my husband and Elaine stepped onto the porch. Melissa followed, quieter, carrying a small tote. Hannah did not come. Absence can be considerate. Caleb explained the rules again. Sentimental items only. No furniture, no electronics, no files, no art, no civil, no silver. Each item photographed and logged, 30 minutes total. Anything disputed remained. Elaine tried to glide past him with a hand toward the china cabinet. Caleb lifted the clipboard without lifting his voice. "No," he said. That was all. They moved in small circles, pretending not to be watched, taking what could be defended as personal. A photo of Victor and his first wife Martha, a faded scarf, a cracked saucer Martha used for rings. Melissa found a box of sheet music from Victor's early years and asked if she could keep one booklet. Caleb checked the list, nodded once. "One," he said. "Logged." She chose a songbook and held it like something fragile that could still be repaired. My husband tried to pocket a pair of cufflinks. Caleb's hand appeared with the grace of a magician and the certainty of a bailiff. "No," he said again, and opened a clear zip bag. The cufflinks went in, logged as attempted removal. There are entries that write themselves. In the bedroom, Elaine reached for a jewelry box and flinched when she found it empty. I had moved the box days ago per Patricia's instructions. She turned on me with a look that mistook volume for leverage. "For the sake of appearances," she began. "For the sake of decency," I said, because repetition is a lesson. Time is running. With 5 minutes left, Melissa stood in Victor's doorway and did not touch anything. "He lacked the morning light in here," she said. It was not a question. She wiped her eyes with the heel of her hand, embarrassed by the biology of grief. "I will not let them do this again," she whispered, almost to herself. "Do better," I said. "Start with tuition. Start small. Small is honest." Time. Caleb walked them out, signed the sheet with the exactness of a metronome, and handed me a copy. My husband lingered. "We were a team," he said, reaching for a story that had expired. "We can still. We were a pattern," I said. "I learned the steps. I am not dancing." Elaine hissed something about court. Caleb smiled the way accountants smile when numbers are not opinions. "See you there," he said kindly. When they were gone, the house relaxed. Some buildings sigh when money leaves. Sunday morning was bright as good paper. At the wildlife rescue, a handler lifted a red-tailed hawk to the sky. A small crowd stood quiet. The bird looked back once, then rose clean on air that had been waiting for it. We clapped without shouting. Release is not a sport. The director handed me an envelope with the first scholarship paperwork inside. A fund in Victor's name for caregivers who need breaks to stay human. "Books and rent," she said, "not plaques." I signed where sticky flags told me to sign. "He would have liked this," I said. On the drive home, my phone buzzed with a number I did not recognize. The bank manager at Victor's branch wanted to confirm trustee access for the audit. His voice was the tone people use when they see a mess and a mop, and bless both. "We have records," he said. "The pattern is not flattering to your in-laws." He paused. "I am sorry for your loss." "Thank you," I said, and meant both parts. In the afternoon, I met Leah at a small place with worn floors and the best roast chicken in the city. She listened the way good friends do, without decorating my sentences. "You sound like yourself," she said finally. "I am learning my voice again," I said. "I forgot I had one that did not negotiate with disrespect." "You have always had that voice," she said. "You just lent it to someone who did not pay on time." We laughed, and the laughter did not hurt. Afterward, we walked past the consignment store. In the window sat a sturdy second-hand table, scuffed, honest, wide enough for pie crusts and paperwork. I bought it without asking anyone and arranged delivery with a date on the calendar titled "Here." That evening, Patricia called with a summary. The audit had found withdrawals labeled for home care supplies that never arrived, and charges at stores that sell sunglasses, not syringes. If they contest, she said, we will file the documents and roll tape of Victor's statement, but I doubt they will. Pride is loud and brief. Debt is quiet and long. Melissa texted a photo of her community college acceptance email. No dorms, buses, and books, starting with 2 classes. Thank you for not shutting the door. I sent back a simple reply. Do the work. Send grades. A little help each term if you pass. She sent a crying smile, which reads better than it looks. Before bed, I opened Victor's letter one more time and traced the final paragraph with my eyes. Clarity is not cold. It is warm and precise. Probate moved like a clean train, on time, no speeches, no heroic last-minute gestures. The judge reviewed the filings. The clerk stamped the deed confirming the trust and the transfer. The gavel did not bang. A pen tapped once. Done. Outside, the courthouse steps held sunlight like a simple blessing. Patricia tucked copies into her briefcase and said, There will be letters. There are always letters. We will answer the ones that deserve it. I thanked her with words and a handshake that meant more. At home, my small temporary hotel room before the new apartment, I made 3 calls. One to the therapist whose name Leah had pressed into my palm. One to the IT friend who would scrub my devices, change passwords, and set 2-factor like a moat. One to the landlord to remove my husband's name from the lease. Each call was a door that closed and opened correctly. In the afternoon, I went back to the house as trustee to meet the estate sale team for the items Victor had earmarked for donation or liquidation. A woman with a barcode scanner and a generous laugh assessed the furniture. Sturdy, she said, not fashionable, the best kind. She marked what would go to charity and what would become cash for the scholarship. Purpose turns objects into engines. On my way out, Mrs. Peterson waved me over. She pressed a tin of cookies into my hands and a folded list of neighbors willing to testify, if anyone tries anything cute. Community is the quiet cousin of the law. It shows up with casseroles and affidavits. That night, I signed a lease on a small place with good light, exactly as planned. I bought fresh sheets and a lamp that warmed the wall to the color of safety. I set the second-hand table by the window and put a bowl on it for keys. Mailbox, apartment, safe, rescue tag. I tipped the bowl and listened to the soft ring of metal. It sounded like a promise kept. My email blinked with the last formal notice from Patricia. Probate closed, trust active, audit transmitted to council with findings. Supervised move-out for Elaine scheduled for 1 week from Monday. Beneath that, one more message from a name I had muted and then unmuted for the sake of endings. It read, I underestimated you. I did not reply. There are silences that are sentences. I opened a new document for my clients and wrote a short note. Studio hours resume next week. The rate is the same. The boundaries are new. I listed available slots. They filled within a day. Work is a kind of grace when you get to do it as yourself. At midnight, I poured the last of the decent port into a small glass and stood at the window. The city breathed. Somewhere a siren, somewhere a laugh. Somewhere a hawk sleeping with one eye half open because wild things learn. Thank you, Victor, I said to the dark. For the paper, for the clarity, for the last 4 days that changed the next 4 decades. I finished the glass, washed it, and left it to dry. Morning would come. It always does. This time, it would find me ready. Monday bled into Tuesday without fanfare. That is how real closure arrives, not as symbols, but as paper that fits. Patricia filed the audit packet first thing. Affidavits from neighbors, pharmacy logs, bank statements with withdrawals labeled for care while receipts showed sunglasses and spa packages. Victor's video, my call log with timestamps that lived like little lanterns. A quiet avalanche of facts. By noon, a detective from the Elder Abuse Unit called to schedule interviews. He spoke gently, like someone who has learned that anger spends energy better reserved for accuracy. "We will start with witnesses," he said. "We move at the speed of proof." At the house, Caleb supervised the removal of a few boxes Elaine had been allowed under strict list. He logged every item like a heartbeat. I stood back and let the process be the process. There is a relief in not needing to narrate. That afternoon at the hotel, a knock came I did not expect. My husband stood in the hallway, eyes red, jaw set, hands empty. He had the look of a man who had finally realized that charisma does not notarize. "Please," he said, "talk to me. I made mistakes. I can fix them." I stepped into the doorway and kept the lock engaged. "The word fix is doing too much work," I said. He swallowed. "I will pay you back. The savings, the cruise, everything." "You have no funds," I said. "The audit knows that." He flinched as if the word audit were a hand. "It was Hannah's idea. Mom pushed. I was drowning." "Victor was dying," I said. "You were floating." He tried another key. "We were a team. We were a pattern," I said. I broke it. "I love you," he said softly, as if he had not used the word like a coupon for years. "I loved you," I said. Past tense is also grammar. He stood there long enough to prove he had no plan. "I will see you in court," he said at last, which is the last sentence of people who do not read the file. "Then bring a lawyer who reads," I said, and closed the door. I sat on the bed and let my hands shake for a full minute, a dignity I now allow. Then I called the hotel desk and asked to block his name from my room. The clerk said, "Of course," and did not make it a headline. Wednesday brought interviews. The detective met me at Patricia's office, where a conference room had been converted into a staging area for truth. Mrs. Peterson spoke first, voice steady, story clean. 2 more neighbors followed, each adding a tile to the mosaic. The bank manager provided a statement. The hospice nurse recorded her notes. All of it fit like a clock. Patricia reviewed next steps. "The civil side is sown," she said. "The criminal side moves at its own pace. You will not need to attend every hearing. You are not alone in the room." Melissa sent a text that evening. Moved out of mom's for now, staying with a friend. Enrolled for 2 classes. She attached a photo of a spiral notebook and a bus pass. Progress sometimes looks like ordinary objects with new meaning. The rescue sent an update. Hawk thriving. 1 more week and the team would release. They invited me to read Victor's name at a quiet circle they hold once a month for animals and people who have left. I said yes. I moved into my new apartment on Friday with 2 friends and a borrowed dolly. The second-hand table fit perfectly under the window. The bowl of keys rang like a small choir, and the lamp turned the wall into a state called home. I made a simple dinner of pasta with butter and parsley because ritual belongs to beginnings. After, I wrote to 3 clients and accepted 3 new jobs. Boundaries at the bottom of each email like a signature I finally owned. At midnight, an email from Patricia. Probate judge scheduled a short compliance hearing for next week to confirm trustee transition and note that no contest had been filed. "It will be brief," she wrote. "Bring a pen, not a speech." I turned off the light. The room did not feel borrowed. It felt earned. The compliance hearing took 12 minutes, which felt like a benediction on efficiency. The judge reviewed the filings, asked Patricia 1 question, asked me another, and nodded. "Trustee confirmed," she said. "Estate settled per will." A pen tapped. Done. On the courthouse steps, sunlight pooled on the stone as if someone had poured it there. Patricia handed me final copies in a slim folder that looked too small to hold so much relief. "There will still be noise," she said. "Ignore all sound without subpoena." We laughed. It felt good to learn humor again without checking a room for permission. That afternoon, the rescue's memorial circle gathered at the edge of a field. 12 people and 12 memories. We said names. Some were animals, some were not. When it was my turn, I said, "Victor Harmon," and the group echoed, "Victor." The hawk rode air like a line written across sky, and I thought, release is also paperwork. Back home, I found an envelope under my door. No return address. Inside, cash, modest, dog-eared, honest, and a note in Melissa's hand. For the scholarship, first of many. I smiled. Repair has many donors. I met with the elder abuse nonprofit director the next day to plan Victor's bequest. "We use money for hours of human presence," she said. "Respite care, ride shares for appointments, a grocery run that keeps the fridge from being a shrug." We sketched a pilot program called Victor's Hours. A small card would list a phone number and the words, "You are not a burden." Emails trickled from names I recognized and some I did not. A retired teller remembered Victor bringing donuts for the branch every first Friday. A former colleague from the bank told me about a scholarship Victor had funded in secret for a teller's night classes. He hated fuss, the colleague wrote. He loved competence. On Saturday, the estate sale team set up. I walked the house one last time as trustee before the public arrived. Caleb handed me a clipboard and a coffee. "You did it right," he said, which is better than saying you did it fast. People came through in gentle waves, buying a chair, a lamp, a stack of paperback mysteries, a box of mason jars. Purpose, not liquidation. The proceeds went directly into Victor's trust accounts earmarked for the scholarship and the nonprofit. Money as a tool, not a trophy. Near closing, Elaine appeared at the door, alone. Mask of poise cracked at the edges. Caleb stepped into his role. "Private event," he said. "Trustee only." She looked at me. Something human flickered. Regret or rage, hard to tell at that altitude. "For the sake of decency," I said, and closed the conversation without slamming it. That night, Leah came over. We ate roast chicken on my secondhand table and split a pear over a sink, like college. "You are different," she said. "I am the same," I said, "but we can see it now." We made a list on the back of a takeout menu titled, "When I Forgot Myself." Each item had a mirror called, "When I Remembered." We laughed until we cried, and then only cried. Grief and joy have learned to share chairs in my house. Sunday morning, I updated my client portal with a waiting list and a note. No rush projects, no panic pricing. We will make something good at a human pace. 3 inquiries left, because they wanted a hustle I no longer sell. 5 stayed and said thank you. That is the math I sleep by now. In the afternoon, I wrote Melissa a short note offering a small monthly stipend for books in exchange for grades. She replied with a photo of an A on her first essay. It was about cycles, she texted, and how to break them. I wrote, "Frame it." As evening fell, I placed Victor's letter in my safe next to my own updated will. The 2 documents looked like a conversation across time. I turned off the lamp and sat by the window until the city lights called me to bed. 2 weeks later, the detective called again. "We are moving forward," he said. "We will not need you for arraignment. If there is a plea, you may not have to testify." He paused. "I have seen worse. I have also seen better. Thank you for being the latter." I thanked him for calling and put the note on the fridge under a magnet shaped like a hawk. Patricia scheduled the final trustee review. We met in her office where legal pads grow like tame plants. We checked boxes. We set reminders. We wrote one line in bold, "No contact except through counsel." Then she stood, which is how she hugs. "It has been an honor," she said. "Please go have an ordinary lunch." I did. Soup and bread and a seat by the window where no one expected me to perform. A letter arrived from the court a week later. The will was not contested. Pride had made noise. Debt had done math. Melissa sent a photo of herself holding a bus pass and a bookstore bag. "First paycheck next week," she texted. I picked up a shift at the cafe. I sent back a thumbs up and a link to a good second-hand laptop. In my studio, now a table with excellent light, I designed a small brand system for the nonprofit's new program. A clock for Victor's hours, hands forming a heart if you squint, but not corny. A palette that felt like morning, typography that did not try to sell, only to speak. I met the scholarship committee at the community college and signed the paperwork. The dean shook my hand and said, "This will keep people in school who would have dropped out on a Wednesday." I liked that he chose a weekday. On a clear afternoon, I walked through a store and saw a ring tray. I stopped, surprised by the absence of ache. I did not need a new ring. I needed nothing in that case. I bought a set of sturdy glasses instead and invited 3 friends for dinner. We ate peaches in syrup because summer had finally offered them honestly. That night, an email arrived from a client who had hired me years ago, then drifted away when my boundaries were porous. "Your work looks stronger," she wrote. "Your voice does, too." I slept with the window open and the future felt like air. Weeks later, Melissa knocked on my door with a small bouquet from the grocery and news. She had passed both classes. We sat at the table and ate cookies from a bag and talked about next terms and budgets and how to teach a younger cousin that love is not supervision. When she left, I felt the kind of tired that comes from lifting something heavy alongside someone who is learning where to grip. On the last day of the month, the rescue released another hawk. Fewer people came. The air did not care about attendance. The bird rose anyway. At home, I wrote one last entry in the notebook that had carried me through. Title: Lessons That Keep. Under it, choose law over lore. Choose receipts over rage. Choose the neighbor who brings a casserole and a statement. Choose friends who hold silence. Choose tables that can take a scar. Choose keys that ring like truth. Choose yourself without apology. I closed the notebook and set it on the shelf. The lamp made a small pool of gold on the wall. The bowl of keys sang when I set my hand on it. I slept. Morning came. The story did not end, it unfolded. There are stories built on shouting. This is not that story. This one is built on paper and peaches and the sound a bowl of keys makes when you tip it just enough to hear the promise. Here is what I know now. Love is not a ledger, but safety is. Put it in writing, not because you expect betrayal, but because you respect the future. Victor did. He packed dignity into clauses and witnesses. He wrote a letter that held shape when people did not. Paper did not love me. A man did. Paper kept his love from being edited by those who had never practiced it. Justice is not a scene. It is a sequence. Photographs, timestamps, a neighbor saying, "I saw," a nurse writing, "I advised," an attorney who prefers pens to speeches, a judge tapping once. Some miracles are 12 minutes long and wear a robe like a well-ironed fact. Grief and joy will share a table if you set enough chairs. Leah will show up with soup and silence. Melissa will bring a bus pass and grades. A stranger will release a hawk and you will feel something lift that is not a bird. Boundaries are not walls you build to keep love out. They are doors that lock and open with keys you own. Hand back the rings that were receipts for a promise not kept. Keep the keys that open rooms where you can rest. If you are standing in a kitchen with a note that tries to rename you as help, breathe. Heat the oven. Make real food for the person who needs it now, which may be you. Call the attorney. Call the nurse. Call the neighbor who tells the truth. Start a log. Save the screenshots. Do not raise your voice. Raise your standards. When they come home sunburned and smiling, let the room speak. It knows what it has held. I still keep peaches in the fridge when I can find them decent in season. I still read a page of Chandler sometimes because sentences that do their job remind me to do mine. I still touch the safe. Not to open it, but to remember that inside are two letters that built a bridge between the person I was and the person I am. I am Jade. I am not a task. I am not a placeholder. I am a woman with a bowl of keys, a second-hand table, a trust to steward, a hawk to watch, friends who knock, clients who respect a pace that keeps us human, and a door that locks. If you need a line to carry with you, take this one. Choose law over lore. Choose decency over spectacle. Choose the future you can sign. Morning will come. Count from 1, then begin. Next up, a Christmas homecoming, a temporary move-in, and a grandmother who signed the wrong deed on purpose. A nephew thinks lineage is a key. The safe disagrees. Bring your receipts.